Welcome back to the Grow Up Wild Men Who Matter podcast. We are in the midst of the heat of the summer right now. We are in Alabama, and if you've ever spent any time in the South, you know that when July rolls around, things start heating up, and we are just surviving the brutal heat here in Alabama. Hey everybody, I'm Steve Wisdom, and as always, I got my man Brandon Broach with me. What about this summer heat,
Dude, I was on the phone this morning with a buddy of mine, and he was on his way back from the gym when I was on my way to the office this morning. He was giving me a hard time. Man, you need to get up. You need to get in the gym, dude. And I said, listen, you come work 8 hours in my warehouse in July, and it's 110 degrees, throwing 50-pound bags around. That's my gym. It's built in.
Yeah, it gets pretty miserable around here in the summer. If you guys don't know, we have a feed company, that kind of a deer feed company that parallels Grow Up Wild and kind of the nonprofit ministry side of Grow Up Wild. Is we try to just help and equip men, and even more so outdoorsmen, people who just love being in the midst of God's creation. We just doing a life with those men, but alongside of it, we have a feed company. And look, in the middle of the summer, there's nothing pleasant about working out in the warehouse. I'm constantly trying to check on my guys, making sure, one, they're alive, and two, I'm not about to have a mutiny on my hands, because look, it's just, there's no way to put it. There's no way to make it any prettier than it is. It is rough. It is hot. It is dirty. It's a grind around here this time of year.
I think, though, that's one of the things I love about it. Because at the end of the day, we don't doubt whether or not we did something. We may not have got it all done, but when you go home sweaty, dirty, man, you did work. That's for sure. And there's a little bit of a rewarding feeling in that, going home at the end of the day.
That's right. We at the very least, we get something done every day. You know, I mean, you're usually sweating 5 minutes into the day. It's not like, it's not like the around the coffee pot in the office start. We usually hit play and go. And at the end of the day, you're pretty spent. And so, but it is what it is. I've lived in Alabama most of my life, and people ask me all the time, do you get used to the summer heat? And my answer always is no. I mean, it's I'm 36 years into this, and every year is just as terrible as the last.
I don't know why that is. It's like we're surprised every year.
Yeah.
I think it's because in Alabama, we've moved really to where we have two seasons.
Yeah.
There's the not hot season and the hot season.
Yeah.
And it just shows up.
Yeah. In school, they teach you that there's 4 seasons. In Alabama, there's 2. It's either hot or it's not hot. That's basically it. There's either leaves on the tree or there's not leaves on the tree.
That's right.
But look, guys, we're glad to be back with you again today. And to that note of just being in the midst of the summer and hot and a grind, and it just seems like it's a battle every day. We want to talk a little bit about that context, that element of being in a fight, being in the battle, being in the grind, and what that looks like, and how to come out on the other side more productive, more successful, and just what's one tool to use to push through those fights in your life and those seasons of press, those seasons where you feel like you are being pressed from all sides. And our hope is that maybe we can help you come out the other end of that successful, better, experience some growth. And so let's see what happens with that, B.
Well, so here's the thing. I just set the table like this. How you respond in a fight, in a challenge, or in a pressure situation, how you respond dictates the outcome of the circumstance, right? I mean, I can say this with pretty good confidence that we are all in the midst of a battle, and we're all in a place but we want to be somewhere else, right? Hopefully we're all men moving in a direction, right? We're moving towards something, either chasing a dream, pursuing a goal, just trying to be better, right? We're not where we want to end up, but we're not where we used to be.
Absolutely.
So we're in motion.
And here's one thing you guys have to grasp, and you know this, but you really need to wrap your head around it. Every pursuit, whether it's your career, it's a startup business, it's a relationship, it's your family, you're being a parent, whatever it is, every pursuit of life, there will be conflict. There will be times where maybe choices were made poorly, where maybe decisions were not made at their best. Maybe there was something said that was not taken right. And so, guys, what we want to talk about today, and which we want you to really grasp, it's not about the seasons of struggle, and it's not about the poor choices and the fights that you're in. It's about how you respond in those times. Your response is going to be key to everything on the backside of that tension. And you've got to learn what that looks like.
Well, because here's the beautiful thing. We're men, and whether or not you would embody this, hey, we're made to fight.
That's right.
I mean, we like, some days you just wake up looking for a fight.
That's right.
And I'm not talking about a street fight, a fist fight, but hey, I like being challenged. I like something being put in front of me and somebody saying, man, you can't do that. I mean, there's something inside of me that immediately goes, wait a minute, we'll see about that. I'll show you, right?
Absolutely.
So think about how boring life would be if there wasn't a challenge. I think we live sometimes in the fantasy of like, man, if I could just get to that place, there wouldn't be any more hardship. If I can just get to that dollar amount or that bank account or that, whatever that pinnacle is, quote unquote, it wouldn't be such a struggle. But man, I think in my life, if I didn't have something in front of me, a challenge in front of me, boy, it'd be kind of boring.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked before we came on air, is you made this statement that I really want to try to peel back. I loved it. We were talking about the context of like how you respond in the midst of your fight or your struggle, your grind, whatever it is how you respond. But you made this statement that your words in a fight, your words will dictate the outcome of that fight. And let's use the word fight in a broader term. We're not, like you said, we're not talking necessarily about a fist fight. And maybe we are. Maybe we're talking about a fight with your wife, right? But or a fight for life, or just trying to solve problems in the midst of your workplace. Your words will dictate the outcome of your struggle. Let's peel that back. What were you thinking when you said that?
So I think words was. When I said your words, that was my choice, but really it's how you respond. It's my perspective. How do you see your challenge in the midst of it? Because I think we have two options. And a lot of times in life, we get faced with a circumstance and we've been working hard or chasing a dream, and then you get somewhere and man, it doesn't really look like you thought it was going to look. I started a company 2 years ago and we've been working hard, and some good days and some bad days, and you look up 2 years later and you're like, man, it's not exactly where I thought we'd be. Or you got a relationship and maybe you've been married for a little while and you look up 5-6 years down the road and you're not necessarily where you thought you'd be. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but there's a gap between where you thought you'd be and where you actually are. And I think we have a choice at that point. And I know a lot of guys, it's easy just to lay down and say, well, I'll never, man, I guess I'll just never be that, or I guess I'll never be him or have that thing. And that's a sad statement because, man, I think we're laying down. And I think you're getting away from how you were designed as men, man. Give me that challenge. Let me rise above it. Let me climb that hill. And so how do we make that choice? And so part of it is how we respond. And when I say, your words matter, I think it's because how we shape our thoughts, how we speak in that moment, what comes out of us when we're pressed. First of all, shows our character, right? If you squeeze an orange juice is coming out. So when you're pressed in a pressure situation or in a challenge, what's coming out of you reveals what's going on the inside. So we got to work a little bit on the inside. But then secondarily, and how we respond, even the words we say, how we act, that can control what happens next. And you mentioned, and think about it, a personal conflict, right? If I'm in a disagreement with somebody, if you and I are having a disagreement, man, I could say one thing that's going to change the tone of it. I could say one, snarky comment that could just escalate it. Now we're just fighting. Now we're just saying stuff to say it. And what I really, hear in this moment is it's in the book of Proverbs in the Bible that a kind word turns away wrath. And I think about that when it comes to talking and fighting and arguing, even with my wife. Like, man, I know what I can say that's really just going to ratchet it up a notch. And it generally doesn't end in a good place. But what happens? How do we respond when things don't look the way we thought they were going to look? It can change the outcome. It can change the temperature of the room. It can change the temperament of what we're dealing with. Because I believe the power that we all have individually, I have the power in my brain to shape what's going to happen next. My dad always used to talk about growing up, man, self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you don't believe it can happen, it's not going to happen, right? Henry Ford has a great quote. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And it all starts there.
Yeah.
So no matter what the battle is you're fighting, the battle starts in your mind. How do you see it and how do you respond to it?
Yeah, so I think it goes to this concept of like we really have to consider how we speak over things. And I know that sounds kind of maybe a little bit silly, but you know and I know and anybody who's done it knows how effective it is when you speak over a situation in a lifting, positive, optimistic, I'm going to take the higher road way, even when you're in the midst of some really pressing, hot, difficult things. The words that come out of your mouth can literally change the entire situation. Not necessarily your intellect, not necessarily the equipment that you have or the access and the resources that you have can change the situation. All those can, but a lot of times they don't. But what is so profound that we see on a day-to-day basis is you literally can change the outcome of a situation by the words that you speak over it. And I'm talking literally, Brandon. I'm not just talking like, oh, be kind and loving. I'm talking if you, for example, like when we're in a struggle out in the warehouse and things are not going well, and I can either choose to go out there and speak words of aggression and disappointment, or go out there and speak words of encouragement and press through and this perseverance mentality. We always persevere. Think about in sports. Right? Think about in your relationships and your marriage. Like when you speak words of affirmation and words of affirming and words of perseverance, the outcome is always better than the alternative.
So let's make it tangible. If you're in the middle of a fight, or if you're waking up and realizing, man, I'm not where I want to be yet, and it's hard and you're tired, I'm just going to give you 3 things to think through. There's 3 steps, right, in my life. The first thing you got to do is you got to stop. Just stop for a second. And somebody told that to me one time, and it's been so helpful because sometimes the best thing you can do is hit pause for a second, especially in today's world, because how easy is it to fire off a text or an email or some kind of communication and you can't get it back, right? Once you say it, it's out there. And so the first thing we got to do is we got to stop for a second. If you'll stop for just a second in the midst of it, take a breath. We can usually prevent further damage with careless words, careless actions, just like you're talking about. Walking out in the warehouse, man, things are broke, it's hot, guys aren't moving very fast. You got to stop and think about, okay, how am I going to start this conversation? Because it's going to go one way or the other. So the first step, just stop for a second and breathe. The second step is you got to realize where you are. Now, in the grand scheme of things, stop and realize, man, I'm not where I used to be. Think about that. If you're waking up today and you're dissatisfied with where you find yourself in your journey, in whatever area you're dissatisfied in, realize, man, okay, I may not be where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be. We got to have that perspective. Sometimes in the midst of a challenge, our perspective gets really narrow, and all we can see maybe is the fight in front of us. And we forget, man, I overcame some stuff, right? I've overcome this and that, and maybe that's given me the tools and the perspective that I need. And the third step is you got to believe. You got to stop, realize where you are, and you got to believe. And that's where we come back to what we were talking about before, man. You got to believe in yourself, believe that you can get there, believe that it's not over, believe that you've got what you need. Because here's what I see. We want so badly for things to be a certain way. Whether you're praying for a miracle or, man, you just want something so bad. I want to be this. I want to have this career. We just want it then to show up one day. And we're just hoping beyond hope. You know, you keep working, but you're just hoping, man, maybe it'll change. Maybe one day it'll show up. Maybe one day I'll be free from it. And unfortunately, what I see is more times than not, that deliverance comes, the thing that we want comes in the form that we're not expecting it. In other words, what I'm trying to say is maybe you want a miracle and God is a miracle worker, but he oftentimes delivers our miracles in the form of instructions or ingredients and not in a fully finished work, because we have an active part to play in the future that we want to see.
So just think about it, like in the Bible, you know, all the different stories of really challenging, dark situations because the person's mentality and how they reacted and the response to the situation, the outcome was extraordinarily better than the situation. I'm thinking about Paul. I mean, he praised God while he was in prison. Think about Joseph. Like he was in prison, but gained favor with the entire prison. So my point is just thinking about those guys who were in very challenging situations in our life, and they chose to still praise and speak life into their situation, not let their situation consume them, not let their challenging and difficult situation consume them, but think about how they could make the best out of a difficult situation. And all we're trying to say today, guys, is just think about this concept of, we so often, when we're in a tough situation, when we're in a challenging situation, when things don't go well, we tend to have negative attitudes. We tend to kind of get in bad moods. We tend to speak negatively about it. I mean, perfect example, this past week, I was doing a football camp for a high school, and I saw this one kid. He clearly was a leader. He clearly was outspoken. He clearly stepped up. He was directing. He was just doing everything that a coach or even a businessman would love to see in a leader, until something didn't go well. And his attitude was so negative, and it was contagious. At one point, I just had to walk up to him and say, "Hey, man, just think about the idea that your attitude is everything. Like, attitude is everything. It is contagious, whether it's negative or positive." And so my point is even in a situation where things are challenging or things are negative, your attitude is contagious. So a positive attitude is contagious, and so is a negative attitude. And so if we can get to a point in our lives where we choose joy, we choose to speak life into a situation, we choose to think about what is good in this situation, and I'm going to focus on what is good and how I could potentially have a positive outcome in a struggle, things will change. It will be effective.
And so here's how I say it, and I see it in my own life, right? When I choose the positive perspective, when I choose to think about the situation, how can I take what I have and leverage it for what I want? When I choose that perspective, it rarely actually changes the immediate circumstance, but it always changes me. It always helps me to move through the challenge with a different attitude, with a better mindset towards the goal. In other words, the power of speaking the right words, speaking life and speaking positivity. It's not positive people or optimistic people are not people who are removed from reality, right? I mean, look, the glass has as much water in it as it has. Whether you perceive it to be half empty or half full, there's still a certain amount of water, and we've got to deal in reality. So it's not to walk through a tough situation and pretend it's not tough. But how you approach it and the perspective that you have can certainly set the tone for how you're going to continue to fight the fight. And that's what I say. The words that you speak in a moment of fight or battle can change the outcome, because it will. It'll set the tone for how you approach the challenge, how you move through a tough season, how you deal with adversity in your life. And you'll come out on the other side stronger and further along than where you were when you started.
Absolutely. And just, guys, don't forget that far too often when things are the most challenging in your life, that means you're the closest to victory than you've ever been. when things are most challenging in your life, you are closer to the finish line than you've ever been. Think about, I heard this last week, a great analogy in football. Think about this. You're on football players are on the field. You've got your DBs and your receivers, your running backs, your linebackers, and everyone's kind of they're big, but it's just typical college football, professional football. And you drive down the field, you work, you outrun people. You get down to the 2-yard line, and all of a sudden you're about to score, and all of a sudden all of those big players leave the game. And the really big players come in. Think about it. You get the goal line stance, the guy, the huge Samoan, gigantic 350 plus guys come in, and you're like, oh, I'm almost to the victory, and now I've beat all these big guys, and now there's even bigger guys in front of me, and I got to beat them. And the guys who have this mentality that I'm going to press through even through the challenging times, and realizing that so often we are at our biggest, we meet the most resistance, we have the most adversaries, we have the most struggle in our lives right before we're on the right at the edge of a breakthrough in our lives. And so my point is saying that and sharing that is, don't let challenging, hard, difficult situations, difficult days, difficult conversations consume you to the point where you lose all your momentum, you lose all of the productivity you've had in your journey, and just realizing that when you are the most hard pressed in your life, you are probably right at the verge of something extraordinary. And so put yourself in a place where your mindset can be, I am going to press through. I'm going to speak life over this situation. I am going to speak words of victory over this situation. I am going to press through these difficult times, and I am going to praise even in the valley, so that when I get to my mountaintop, I will be able to rejoice that much more. And it's easier said than done, and we get that. We get it, right, Brandon? We get it's easier said than done. But if you begin now thinking through that, preparing for that, having a game plan where even when I am pressed, I am going to rejoice, because I know that my journey is not a journey in vain, that it is a journey towards extraordinary living, extraordinary productivity, extraordinary fulfillment that God has prepared for me. But you're going to have to make some choices along the way.
So here's a takeaway quote this week, again from Henry Ford. Just think on this. Try to put it into practice this week. Whether you think you can do something or you think you can't, you're right. It's all about what you choose.
Amen to that. Well, until next time, guys, we always enjoy being with you. We truly, like I always say, we truly love just sharing things that we see week to week and things that we're challenged with from week to week. And we hope that they are of value to you guys. And so we appreciate you. And as always, hey, check out our Instagram account, Grow Up Wild, Facebook, and check out our website at growupwild.com. We have some material on there that may be of value to you. We have an email chain that goes out, and look, we don't want to abuse that. We once a week we send out an email of really some just deeper thoughts of the things that we talk about on our podcast. And man, look, if you love our podcast, just like it, share it, tell people about it. Our hope, the only hope we have in this is we're simply trying to equip men to live out a life of extraordinary, significant impact that they were designed for, and that's it. And again, it's not us trying to show you how to do it. It's we're walking through it with you guys every day, week in and week out. We are having to choose to do and pour into and initiate the same things that that we're encouraging you to do. And like I've said before, honestly, most of the stuff that we talk about, it's things that we had to tackle last week, and we're talking about it this week. It's,
That's right.
We're not these theologians and biblical scholars, and just, we don't have doctorates or PhDs in psychology. Hey, we're simply trying to live a life of extraordinary impact and live out the design design that God had for us and the purpose that God had for us, so that we wake up every day and we go to bed every night looking in the mirror and we know that we made a difference in the life, in the sphere, in the world that we lived in. And God is looking down on us saying, good job, my good and faithful servant. That's it. That's all we're doing every day. We're living it with you. And so until next time, guys, we love you. We're grateful for you. Go be men who matter.